This is episode 10 of Pucks, Putts, and Properties. Danny, we're double digits now in episodes. It's a great thing.
It's a milestone. Couple clicks for the pod.
Anniversary day
10
for you and
games
I.
in, right?
Yeah, 10 games in. That's right.
Nice.
Anyways, we've got an amazing guest that comes on here, Eric Dinelle, CEO of Environmentall Contracting. You got to stay tuned for this one. He's really, really strong and a big player in construction in the Kingston area.
Local guy, has worked his way from the bottom to the top. You just got to love these kind of stories. And loved having him on. Great listen.
Anyways, Danny, what's the latest in your business? What's going on these days?
It's good. I've been finding land is starting to move. People are getting in there. The snow is thawing, obviously, so people want to get their permits in. I think we're seeing an uptick in sales, to be honest with you. The threat of tariffs have some people on the sidelines. I don't want to go too much into that. We're going to see the stats come out here for the last month in the next couple days. I think we're going to see the needle move. You see the tariffs get pushed back. I think that's been the biggest apprehension. I think we're going to see another rate decrease too here with the Bank of Canada. The Liberals just elected their new leaders, who's got a new prime minister, even though I feel like it's one and the same. So I think we're going to see an election here in October. There's a lot of moving parts here in Canada. I know there's a lot of moving parts in the States too. So lots to talk about on the news, whether it's locally, globally, and hockey and golf. So it's awesome.
Tons to talk about, but we're going to make our pre-ramble here a little quick, just to get to Eric quickly, because he's such a strong interview. But on my end, yesterday I had an interesting one. For the first time, I've had an off-market deal come together. So an exclusive listing. So for those that don't know, exclusive listing is allowing you to represent a seller prior to posting to the MLS before it's publicly listed. And another agent made me aware that they had a buyer that was the match for property. So trying to work going through that. So that's been fun.
That happens when I talk to people. I'm like, are you looking for something? That's the best way, because a lot of these things, I think we're probably 1 in 5 deals right now that are off market. Like, it's a very high percentage right now, because a lot of people don't want to list their house on the MLS. They don't want to see nosy neighbors clicking through their master bedroom and see their setup. Like, it's a thing. So if people are looking for stuff, reach out. Because we can find some stuff that are off market.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about with that. Is if you are considering a move, let Danny, myself, or the realtor you're working with know what you're trying to accomplish, because sometimes we can get this done, and there's opportunities out there that you don't see on the MLS.
Because we have group chats within our brokerage, but we also have group chats within our whole Kingston board too, as well as the Quinny board. So we're involved with that. And if people have to move, whether it's like right now in the next month or the next 2, like there is a community here of people that help people move. So reach out if you are looking for something in particular.
The other thing that I know you have experience in that I'm going through right now is working with family. I know there's risks to doing this all the time, and it's seemingly to have gone well. My approach with it is that you have to remove yourself from that relationship and treat your client, even though it's a family member, have the conversations like they're a normal client, because sometimes with close friends and families, you'll say things that you might otherwise not say with family. So you may not go into it too much here, but I know that I'm working successfully right now. Today it's going very well.
Good.
So
couple clicks on that one too, buddy.
So something interesting that you and I literally just did is a DISC analysis. So it's personality analysis that I wanted to talk about. Go ahead. Do you want to read yours first?
No, I'm not going to read mine. I feel like it came back as I'm a psycho. So that
I don't think so. There's lots of positives there.
Okay. Well, I'll read mine. It's just with Tony Robbins here, and I'll read it. It says, formalist, meaning I thrive on precision, attention to detail, and maintaining stability in his work, given clear expectations, a structural timeline, and quality resources. He consistently delivers high-quality results. While I may be cautious with risk, he makes decisions based on solid facts, logic, and thorough analysis. Though not always the most outwardly verbal, my deep critical thinking is a major asset. I should be encouraged to share his insights more openly. My strengths lie in commitment to accuracy, follow through, and ensuring tasks are completed with excellence. However, under stress, I may become overly cautious, slow to adapt to new methods, or get stuck in the details. Encouraging flexibility and open collaboration will help me maximize my strengths while staying adaptable. Well, did I ever learn something through Tony Robbins today?
I think that's amazing as a realtor that you'll dive deep into the stats and what's going on in the market. I think that speaks really nicely to that aspect of your business.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I'll take that compliment. I feel
Yeah.
like that happens when you've failed quite a bit, and I have failed a lot in hockey. And I think once you've failed and you've kind of go back to the drawing board and you learn like what you do well when you have success and when it's not going well. Like,
Yeah.
I think that comes from a lifetime of failing at hockey more than anything.
So I know what you're gonna say about mine, and it's gonna be really funny because I sometimes don't take a clear stance on stuff. You refer to
Oh.
me as waffling.
Yeah, you are the
And-
Waffle House.
And that comes through on here. So I'll read mine for fun. So it's described me as a coach, which is, accurate. I've done a lot of coaching through golf, curling, and other athletics. Enjoy helping people just in general. So my personality is a coach, highlights my ability to actively listen, provide genuine support, and foster strong relationships. I bring stability, insight, and encouragement, helping others navigate challenges with balance and accepting approach. My ability to diffuse tension and see the bigger picture makes me a valuable team member, though you may sometimes hesitate to take a firm stance on divisive issues.
You're the worst to talk politics with. The worst. Anyway.
Strengthening my decisiveness and urgency could enhance my impact, but overall, my sincerity and ability to connect makes me a trusted and stabilizing force for those around me.
I think that's got you pegged pretty good.
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah, Tony Robbins. Yeah.
Little Waffle House, though.
Yeah, we should rename the podcast from Pucks, Putts, and Properties to the Waffle House.
The coffee chat at the Waffle House. I like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was fun to do.
It was. Yeah.
I really do think it has me pegged, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say a lot of that has me pegged as well.
Yeah.
for
But
sure.
there's some really strong traits in that for you as
Ditto.
far as as far as business goes, and it does highlight our different approaches. So
Yeah.
those that are getting to know us through the podcast, you've
Mhm.
got two different options here
Options,
to
yeah.
go with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on, we talked. I brought up who I would most like to have dinner with that's alive today, and I mentioned Adam Sandler, and he's really been hot in the media lately. The Oscars I thought was hilarious when I forget who the host was, called him out for showing up in a hoodie and gym shorts.
But that had to be planned, though.
It was a bit.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was a bit, and jokingly kicked him out because everyone loves Sandler, and that's part of his appeal, that he doesn't conform to the norms. Like, he might have shown up in a suit otherwise from the bit, but he wanted to show up in a hoodie and gym shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been watching the last 2 nights. We've been watching him, Adam Sandler, and
Jennifer Aniston.
Oh God! Like the kids have been watching. Like 8, 10, and 12-year-old are like dialed into this murder mystery.
Yeah.
And they love like laughing out loud with some of the scenes that he has. It's so good.
I'm a big Adam Sandler rom-com fan.
Okay.
Like Drew Barrymore.
Yeah.
50 First Dates, one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. This past weekend went to a concert. We haven't really talked music much on the pod. Yeah. Went and saw Winter Sleep.
Winter Sleep?
Yeah, Collective Soul.
Okay.
And Our Lady Peace. So 90s nostalgia.
Yeah.
It was a great show in Ottawa. At the end, Ray Maida, the lead singer of Our Lady Peace, actually had come off the stage and went behind the sound to a piano and was playing like right in amongst the entire audience. It was really, really cool. And he did talk about his wife Chantal Kreviatsik was a little bit political with changing the words of the anthem at one of the hockey games, and he made it clear what she was trying to say is, I'll not say the F-bomb that he used, but Canada is not for sale.
Yeah.
That's what she was trying to say.
The cool thing about those artists is that the people listening to them would have listened to them on a CD and then like on a disc, and it's like everybody remembers like the headphones and the batteries that you'd have to have on supply because your Discman goes or whatever.
Do you remember how much those Discmans used to skip?
Oh, they're terrible.
Like you pick it up, it skips. You had to have
help it and you blow on it, put it back in, make sure it clips in. Like, but that's pretty cool that you remember them as a kid and now you get to go see them in person. And with all the technology that we have today, pretty cool that they're still playing.
Collective Soul, I have to say, was my standout.
Okay.
Our Lady Peace was the headliner, but I really enjoyed listening to Collective Soul.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's the Our Lady Peace is something, but Collective Soul is super, super nostalgia. Like that's mid 90s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember like putting on a Collective Soul CD and playing pool or ping pong with my friends, listening, jamming out to Collective Soul.
So mine was Nirvana.
Oh yeah.
Nirvana was like that. And there's a few others in there that I can't remember. Like Our Lady Peace, they're where are they from? They're from
Canada.
Yeah,
they're so. Canadian.
Didn't want to throw it out there. And yeah. So a little pride on that.
For sure. Yeah. Anyways, that was a lot of fun, but we've got the trade deadline to get into. And obviously the one that we're going to start with is the Brad Marchand trade to Florida, which is a big impact to Florida's lineup. But also Brad Marchand's been a career Boston Bruin. So it's kind of a little bit surprising to me to see him be moved out of Boston.
Yeah. 16 years, 17 years.
It's a long time. I want to say since 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's been on like a hometown discount for years and years and years. And from my understanding, they weren't that far apart and the Bruins just weren't willing to come up on price. Like it was pretty vocal, or Brad was, that he wanted to stay in Boston his whole career. But at some point, like the management's got to see, like if they're in a rebuild, what better guy to have in the locker room than Brad Marchand, who's literally done it all.
Yeah.
I feel for Bruins fans. I really do. Because that one was, that's an oopsie in my opinion. Because it's weird. Like the evolution of Brad Marchand, he's come from this young kid, like the little rat, and now he's evolved to this veteran that's like really tough to play against, still has the skill to play in a top 2 line role. And now he's going to Florida. That's an absolute wagon. Really sad news today or the other day that Ekblad has been suspended for 20 games.
I did see
for the substance
violation,
abuse.
Yeah.
Having played in the game for a while, sometimes you take things from people that, say, hey, this is good, but you don't read the fine print on what exactly is in there. And so, I think that's obviously a mistake on the player for not reading the print or going to his training staff to say, hey, am I able to take this?
So just for clarification, we're talking about performance enhancing, not players' assistance that he's entered.
No, it was, it wasn't. I don't think it was an illegal substance like that you can't take. It was more so for recovery. And I just don't think there was something in it that you can't take that he didn't know about. So I don't think it was an intentional way to better himself on the ice. I think it was, I firmly believe it was an accident, and every one of his teammates would be able to say the same, just come from the kind of guy that he is. So happy news out of Florida, but that sad news also on that, but it seems like he's going to be back for playoffs, which is a great news. Let's go on to the trade deadline, because this was a great one.
Well, I want to go back to Florida, because can you imagine playing against a line that is Sam Bennett, Tkachuk, and now Brad Marchand?
It's like the modern day Hanson brothers.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Modern day. Like that is going to be an absolute, like, I feel bad for whoever's going to have them in the first round.
Right? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like playoffs, playing against, if all three of them are on that line, like healthy, that is going to be tough to play against.
And I think we saw that too in the Four Nations. Like a heavy game is tough to play. And they had some of the best players in the world out there. And when you had the two Tkachuk brothers on the same line with whoever, that was hard to play against. Like it was all that Canada can handle. So yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. This first round is going to be really exciting. So, but we got a lot to talk about too, as far as other trades.
I want to talk about the instigators for a second though, of all-time instigators, who your favorite is. I've got a few down here on a list. I'm going to go Sean Avery.
Sean Avery. I've played with Sean Avery in LA. He definitely has a ton of skill. If only he could have just kept his mouth quiet. But that was part of his game, right? Was just getting in other people's skin. And my God, he is quick. If you could, he's got a podcast as well. And if you just throw a quarter in him live, that would be a really entertaining for him to him talk.
Yeah.
Very, very opinionated. In a dressing room, though, over the course of an 82 game season, I can see how it would be very wearing on some teammates where you just have to listen to him all the time.
Because he doesn't have the dial to turn it off, from what I can tell.
There's zero turn off.
Yeah.
Like, he does not need coffee in the morning at all, but he can go. And you know what? You want a Sean Avery on your team. If you had the option to have him on your team and not, you're going to have him on your team all day long.
You'd rather have him with you than against
100%. A guy that I see here on our list would be top for me would be Chris Neil. Growing up in Ottawa, he's played there a long time. The one great thing about Chris Neil that not a lot of people talk about, for as heavy as he played and how many fights as he has been in, he's never been suspended. To play that long and never be suspended, I think is like a really tip in the cap, because when we look at agitators, all of them have a pretty lengthy suspension list. But for him to be able to do it clean, I think really speaks volumes about that player too.
And so beloved in Ottawa. He was fan favorite for so many years.
Big time. Like, he's one of the guys that you could see that can be in management, long term if he wants to do that. Like, I know he owns a couple of restaurants and bars in and around town, and he's very popular there, and it's very popular destinations for drinks and food. But yeah, huge fan. But that's I'm obviously biased because I did grow up in Ottawa, and of the agitators that we have on the list, like that one sticks out to mind.
The funny thing about Sean Avery now is he's actually started an acting career. Did you see that?
I did. Yeah.
He was actually in Oppenheimer and had lines in the movie Oppenheimer.
Yeah. I've heard him talk about it too. Like, but it doesn't surprise me. Like, he's out there and he's not scared, and like he lives in New York right now, and he is a pure New Yorker. Like,
yeah, he doesn't breakfast at the Waffle House.
No, he has a stance and he lets everybody know, right? Like, he's not walking over the line. He is running over it.
Correct. So, here's what I think. You don't have to ask me.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, let's move on to the other trades.
Yeah. Mikko Rantanen to Dallas. Mm-hmm. What did you see there?
I was shocked that Carolina made the trade for him without actually having negotiating with him prior to the trade. Like, that is a big trade to give away Natchez for Rantanen, not even knowing if you're going to have Rantanen long term. I do like Stankoven, and they got a couple first round picks out of that. But I think the real winners was Dallas, was in securing him for $12 million, especially with the cap going up. I do think that there's a bit of a ball being dropped on Colorado's side. I do think that he would have stayed for that 8 times 12. A lot of people were thinking that he was wanting like 13 or 14. But I mean, I think they did very well. We can get into that in a little bit here, but
and before the deadline, Dallas acquired Michael Granlund and Cody Ceci as well. So they made some big moves leading up to deadline day also.
And the scary thing is, like, Dallas and Colorado could see each other round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That first round would be one of the best, could be one of the best of all time. They would be my 2 picks right now out of the West to go to the Cup final. Like, they play such a heavy game and they are so deep. I think this would be the first year where you're going to see complaining of how the NHL is set up as far as a playoff format is concerned. Because to have one of those 2 teams out in the first round is a shame, because they are 2 powerhouses that should be at least going to second to third round.
And I guess on the back end, what that does to the winning team, because that series will be such a battle. What is it they're going to be beat up going into the rounds after? You'd
think Winnipeg's going to get out of the first round this year, even though I know they didn't do so well last year in the playoffs. That was a big sore spot on their end, but they're going to see Winnipeg. One of those 2 teams is going to see the best team in the West after that. So getting out of that one division is going to be extremely difficult, which could actually work out, I guess you'd say, in Edmonton or Vegas's favor. I would say those are the 2 favorites going out on that end. Little quiet from obviously Vegas and Edmonton. I know that they've kind of secured a few things that they needed on their end to fill in their secondary roles. But getting into Colorado even more, they picked up Brock Nelson, which I thought was a huge pickup. And they also picked up, who was the other guy that
William Dufour?
Yes. Yeah. So they picked up some huge pieces that you look at Colorado right now too, like from what they've done at the start of the year to now, they are a completely different team. Like they picked up goaltending when it was atrocious at the beginning of the year, which is really tough to do mid-season. And they try to replace, Rantanen with a Brock Nelson, and he's looked really good actually coming over. So time will tell who actually, really wins this trade deadline with how they go in the first round or in the playoffs.
I'm not sure that there was any goalie moves leading up to deadline day, was there?
Peter Mrazek.
Mrazek, that's right. Yeah,
they've solidified some depth at that spot in Detroit. It's kind of been a revolving door. I know Talbot's kind of been like their clear number one, but you need a 1-2 punch. There's only a handful of Bobrovskys and Vasilevskys in the league, so you need a 1-2 punch, in my opinion.
Yeah. What do you think about Edmonton's goaltending going into the playoffs?
That's going to be the big question mark, right? I think, Skinner was able to do, get the job done for the most part in the playoffs, but, with Pickard, he's definitely can fill in at spots. Like he'd be a great backup for Vasilevsky or Bobrovsky, but I mean, long term, I think they might have dropped the ball with not acquiring anybody, but it's really hard to add, a goaltender nowadays, right? Like you don't want to give up too many assets. And there's very few goaltenders that can play at that level and play in that playoff position too. So I'd love to see a lot more newcomers come out as far as young goaltenders being able to fill those spots, but it's, if it's a really hard position to play at the highest level of hockey, right? So, yeah, moving on the trade list.
We'll hit a couple Canadian teams. Scott Lawton to the Toronto Maple Leafs from Philly.
Yeah, I thought that was a big pickup. I heard he's like an animal as far as his work ethic and practices in the weight room. And I think that's your third line center. And I think that's what they were looking for. The other one that they picked up was Brandon Carlo. I think that is going to be a massive pickup for them. And you won't really see, the benefits of that until the first, second round, where you got Tanev and Carlo going every other shift. I mean, that's going to be a really good pairing down the stretch. And I'd really like to see what Stollards can do in a playoff series. To me, I think he's been the better of the two. And just with his size at 6'6", you look in there and he makes that net look like a mini stick net. Like he is massive in there. So it's going to be really exciting. I know there's living where we do, we're predominantly Leafs fans more than we are Habs or Sens. It's going to be a really cool first round if somehow the Leafs and the Senators can play first round. Because right now, I think that Florida's 2 points up on the Leafs. So if they can somehow get in that one spot and Ottawa squeaks in that second wild card, my God, we've been around, and I think most of the listeners been around for when the Leafs play the Senators in the first round of the playoffs. It is so fun to watch and so fun to be a part of. I feel like the hockey rinks, the beer league rinks, are going to take a hit once that first round comes on. No one's going to want to be playing hockey. They're going to be at the bar or at their buddy's place playing or watching.
Yeah, and I bailed on my game to watch the Canada-US final in the Four Nations. So yeah. I get that. Yeah.
So rinks are going to be, or at least rinks will be quiet if Toronto and Ottawa play each other first round.
Yeah. And speaking of Ottawa, Dylan Cousins to Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I get the pickup. For me, what was interesting to see was how emotional Brady Tkachuk was when Josh Norris got traded. They got that American connection, but I do think that'll help. Dylan Cousins is from Belleville, I believe, and played in Quinny growing up. And I think that it'll help him down the stretch. I think Ottawa's been a huge surprise this year, to be honest with you. I know some people had them in the playoffs. Other people didn't. They haven't really been in or had a good team for a while. Allmark has kind of really stepped up his game to kind of lead them into the playoffs. But the league needs to have Brady Tkachuk in the playoffs. It really does. I think he is such a presence. I think everybody saw that at Four Nations. It's just the league is better when Ottawa is in the playoffs as well as the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if we could see that first round, I think the viewership is going to go through the roof.
So Canadian teams, last cup won 93. Who's giving our
the best shot?
Best shot, yeah.
That's a great question. I haven't thought of that. You got to say Winnipeg right now. They're the best team in the league. They haven't been able to prove it in playoffs, but I think they've addressed that. They've gotten heavy. They're a really tough team to play against, and they've got the best goalie in the world right now, I think.
Okay.
So,
I'm gonna go Edmonton just to be different.
Edmonton.
Well, I
want
McDavid to win.
I think we all do. I think
Yeah.
I think everyone has a soft spot for him after seeing the Face Off on Amazon Prime. I'm very excited for the second season they're coming out. I think they've probably went into much greater detail this after they've seen the success for this first season had.
Do you imagine the coverage we're going to get from the Four Nations?
Oh, it's going to be good.
It's going to be so good.
Yeah. And then the playoffs, like I know my kids have watched that season at least 10 times.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to hear the players behind the scenes and to understand for fans, like they're people at the end of the day. And
Right.
it's just like, they just you think that they're just almost like a video game character at sometimes, and you can just speak to them or however you want to them on the keyboard or whatever. But once you see it in depth and how much they care and how much they sacrifice, like you really start to love these players away from the rink. Anyway,
I just love these series that we're getting.
Yes.
that covers the reality of professional sports. The PGA Tour one was released. I gotta say though, on that one, I think I felt that the first so far that what I've watched, the first season was better than the second season that I'm watching right now. I got to the point of the Scotty Scheffler arrest, and I was really hoping for more details on it. I guess there probably just isn't. Scotty's just such a good person. There's not much more to the story. I really don't think.
No.
But I was hoping for more coverage on it.
Yeah.
To see something different, but it really didn't exist.
Yeah, you wonder why. I'm sure there's got to be an underlying reason, but Scotty Scheffler seems like he's got that personality of like Adam Sandler, like very laid back, like he is who he is, but maybe not in like the hoodie and in gym shorts. But
yeah,
you're just not scared and not fazed by anyone's opinions and just very genuine.
Correct. He's really comfortable in his own skin. He knows the person he is, and he's got really strong values, I guess is how I'd describe him. Getting into golf, he's actually had a soft start to the season so far. He had a hand injury that set him back, and the season that he had last year was just so strong. You got to think he maybe took a little extra time off to reflect on the season he had, and I think he cut his hand on a glass bottle. And that would have set his preparations for the season back a little bit. I think we're heading.
Did he smash a beer bottle? Like, I don't understand.
It might have been a wine bottle. I don't know. I don't know what the story was. But yeah, you got to think that we're getting into pretty close to major championship season now. You got to think Scotty's going to start to turn it on. We're heading into the Players Championship this week, which is really, really exciting.
Nice.
It was the Arnold Palmer invitation last weekend, and I just feel like golf is starting to get into the swing of the real season.
Yep.
These are start of the big events, especially with the Players Championship this week. So we'll be looking forward to seeing what Scotty does for the Players. I think he won the last two. I think he'd be going for the three-peat this year. So funny stat for you. I believe he was the 7th ranked for scoring record last season. Can you believe that? The season he had, his overall scoring average for the year was 7th on the list. Who do you think were 1 through 6?
You got Xander Schauffele's got to be in there.
No, overall, like of lifetime of PGA Tour.
No idea.
I'll give you one tip.
Okay.
1 through 6 is the same guy.
Oh, geez. Tiger Woods
1 through 6 for scoring average. With remarkable of a season that Scotty Scheffler had last year, he was 7th for scoring average for the season.
All time.
Tiger is 1 through 6.
Wow.
Isn't that remarkable?
He's still the GOAT, right?
I still want to see one more major championship out of Tiger.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's possible. He's so broken. But we'll talk about the Arnold Palmer Invitational for a second. Shane Lowry led through 36 holes and shot 76 on Saturday. He had a good Sunday to bring himself back, not really into contention, but it was tough to see Shane-O. I really like him.
Yeah.
He's great.
He's starting to become a fan favorite, right?
Yeah.
Can you see, like, of the big golfers that are coming through, who do you see that's going to go up and who do you see is going to tank a bit?
Tough to say.
Yeah. Like if you had 3 golfers that are going to be in the top 5 right now, like who do you got?
Xander Schauffele,
Yeah.
Scotty Scheffler, obviously. Colin Morikawa, he led the majority of the tournament at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. He had a bit of a tough back nine on Sunday. Who else am I missing?
Well, there's Rory. Where do you think
Rory? Yeah. You hate to say it, but Rory's been around so long. He's on the back nine of his career now.
I know, but like
it's crazy to think.
It's not as if it's his body; it's more of the putting. Am I wrong in that?
Yeah, there's a lot of scar wounds there.
Yeah.
Corey Connors.
Yeah,
he's
Canadian
getting
boy.
close. We're cheering for him. He was all pars and one birdie on the 16th in the final round. So he had quietly a really strong finish. Finished third in the Arnold Palmer Invitation.
Yeah.
Keegan Bradley is an interesting story. He's getting older. He's the Cup captain for the U.S. side this year, and he had a 64 on Sunday to finish 7 under. So still really a strong game. I wouldn't put him in that top 5, but a really, really, really good player. Russell Henley was our eventual winner. He had a big chip in on 16 and big par save from 7 feet on 17 and went on to win the championship. Sort of coming back from... So Henley played strong coming in, and Morikawa was a little soft coming in. So that's the Arnold Palmer Invitation.
But you know what? There. It's golf season, right? Like everyone's feeling the weather, the snow's dwindling. Like it's time. I bet you we'll be out there in about a month. Would you say?
Yep.
Like around time. Like now's the time to get your clubs fitted and they're
for sure
rusted off.
And I'm hoping to bring some golf people on the podcast. Obviously, with a career in golf, I'm still connected to some people that we're going to bring on here eventually. Speaking of guests, anyone who wants to share an opinion, anyone who has thoughts, business owners in Kingston, I know we want to keep it local.
Yep.
So anyone who's watching this and is interested in coming on our podcast, we'd love to have you on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And with that said, we're going to go over to amazing interview with Eric Dinelle of Environmentall Contracting. He's the CEO. You got to check it out. Danny and I are very excited to welcome today's guest on the Pucks, Putts, and Properties podcast, Eric Dinelle. He's the CEO of Environmentall Contracting Services. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you. So let's just dive right in to what your business is. Can you give us a brief overview of Environmentall and what sets your company apart in the industry?
I've always been a construction guy. Came out of university right into the construction space. You know, not to age myself, but that's 30 years ago now. Did construction, commercial, residential construction in Toronto for about 8 years. Got a wicked opportunity to come to Kingston and work with the hospitals doing capital planning and managing their projects. At the time, I always wanted to start a business. I had tried to start a tanning salon, which was about a 3-year stint here, and Bath and Gardeners in Kingston. I tried a brewery, and I was out trying to get away from construction, but my heart kept pushing me back into construction. When we decided to start our own business, we wanted it to be in the environmental space of some nature. But of course, 25 years ago, the environmental space was really not an important piece to a lot of consumers' care and concern because of the budget, right? It is expensive to spend more money, whether you're building green or whether you're cleaning up a dirty site. So 15 years ago, it'll be 16 years in October, we decided to launch Environmentall and not only construct, which we still do, but also demolish, spill cleanup, do environmental work, asbestos removal, mold, that type of stuff. And so launched the business, hence the name, the brand, with the environmental feel. But it did take a couple of years before we actually started getting traction on the environmental side. We really kept the building piece going, and that kept us busy and kept the work coming in. But Kingston, bit of an old school town, didn't really open the door right away to allow us to get into the sort of old school space. But eventually we kicked our toe in the door and got into it. So it's been a really, really crazy 15 and a half years. It's hard to believe, but still having fun and curious to see what this market's going to be like this year. But it's been really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you guys face challenges like every day, and it's always changing, right? But would you say that was probably your hardest challenge, was getting your foot in the door? And then once you're kind of had the business going, like things were kind of smooth sailing?
Yeah. So what I think a lot of cities in Ontario, Kingston's fortunate. We've got 6 or 7 really, really diverse, independent 50 to 70-year-old contracting companies, one being at 100 years in Sullivan and Sons. These companies have been doing this forever, and they've been using their key people, their trades that they trust, the trades that provide them with warranty work, etc. So when a new kid on the block comes along and starts trying to shake things up a little bit, it's not only the trust factor, but they got to believe that you're capable of doing the work. The environmental business, which the term is very loose, it includes a broad scope of services, but it is highly regulated. And we have licenses upon insurance and pollution liability, and then your vehicle insurance and your license to carry contaminated materials and hazardous materials. And so the two real barriers were obviously making sure that they knew that our paperwork was in order so that they had no liability, but then getting our foot in the door with a company that has been doing this in Kingston for 60, 70 years. And once we gained their trust, it became a lot easier. Now we have those key contractors, but the business has turned into a little bit of a tender type of market where everything is put out to tender. The procurement policies are a lot more rigid than they used to be. There's no more, handshake deals or making deals on the golf course. Those days have kind of started to slide a little, which we're fine with that because fairness is a two-way street. We put our price in. If we're the right number, then we get the work. And we just hope that our partners, give us that fair shot of giving them the right number. And so the market has evolved a little bit from when we first kicked our toe in the door, but it's been complicated. And this year, certainly with the talks, tariffs and just having a provincial government form, a lame duck federal government, it's all been very, very challenging for you guys as well in real estate. I'm sure it's the same thing. Just everybody's kind of holding back just a little bit just to see, once the dust settles, what's everything going to look like? What's the cost of living going to look like? Can I afford a vacation property or a rental? Or so different dynamic right now, and we feel it every day here. There's people that are sort of holding back the shoe store or building a new commercial building or whatever it is. Even our ICI clients, just March has always been notoriously a government budget year-end type time of the year. So new budgets coming out at the end of the month. So we'll see, what happens to their capital allocation for the next year. But this is an interesting time of the year for us, for sure. And I don't know, for you guys must be for real estate because the snow's melting outside and people start to think about, what's the next move, next opportunity.
Environmentall's been around since 2009. How has the company evolved over the years? And talk about some of the major milestones that you've accomplished with its growth.
I'm sure you guys have heard the word culture. It's a phrase that's maybe a little bit overused, but we have a business that has evolved from the baby boomers showing up every day at 6 a.m, slugging away the whole day and leaving and being happy doing so, to a workforce that's a little bit more sensitive and a little bit more caring to that nature. But culture has become a big part of my role to make sure that every day we're working on keeping this place a great spot to work. And I would, interestingly enough, answer this question differently if you would have posed it a few years ago to now. A few years ago, I would have said, here's some key projects and here's, when we bought an excavator and this and that. But a big part of what we've done over the years is continue to move into better facilities for our employees. And one would never imagine the sort of trust and the culture that comes along with moving into a new building. When you're a contractor in a pickup truck, it's very hard to develop a culture that people want to attach themselves to and grow with you. So the first opportunity we had was to move into a shared space, which was hugely appreciative. but it was very open. There was other companies there, and it was very hard to work on SOPs and policies for our employees. 2012, we bought our first little office on Cattaraugus Drive, and you hang your sign up. You have parking spots for your vehicles. Your employees have a break room. All of a sudden, you get this feeling like, okay, we're starting to get established. People want to be here. We're starting to pay people better, and it all comes with having four walls around your tools, your equipment. And then 2019, we built a new shop on Bennington Court, 12,000 square feet with a warehouse, mechanic bay, 2 floors, over 20 offices in this building now. And we worked endlessly to get a license from the Ministry of Environment to transfer waste in the backyard and do recycling, which is a big, big part of sort of the core brand for Environmentall, the sustainable part of being a demolition contractor that can also recycle, because most of our projects, the client doesn't want you sifting through waste on their job site and trying to sort and recycle while you're there, because they want you out of the way so they can put their footings in and get the building up. So we have now a space where we can legally bring waste, whether it be asbestos, steel, concrete, plastics, glass, leaf and yard waste. We can bring it all here. We could drop it on a floor, sort it. We can, cut copper. We can strip wires. We can crush concrete. We can bulk steel. So we're moving steel when the market's high and not low. And that ultimately has been a huge benchmark for us, because the culture shifts when people see a brand new building, people in the building and offices. When you invite clients in for a meeting, you have a professional boardroom. And it's tough to say, because I was the guy in the pickup truck and I went through those years, and it's hard looking back right now and going, how did I do it? Because of all the things I just talked about, we didn't have that. And somehow we got to where we are today. A lot of hard work, obviously, but culture has just been such a big piece of what we've done here, and we wouldn't have accomplished it without hitting those milestones that I just described. Of course, we key projects and buying equipment have been big for us as well. We have a facility here now that has a truck scale for tractor trailers, shipping and receiving docks, and we have our own store within the building where we have all of our emergency supplies and consumables and equipment for spills and asbestos removal and all of the daily things that we need, masks. And, it's really helped us, because Kingston, albeit we're a big city, we have a lot of vendors and retailers here, but the very, very weird, unique tools and some of the product that we use for molds and lead paints and whatnot, they're not just sitting on a shelf at Home Hardware or Home Depot. So you've got to bring them in and have somewhere to inventory them. And that's a big part of what key employees are looking for when they're looking for a place to come and hang their hat, right?
I can attest, obviously, with the hockey background, how important it is with the culture. So the fact that you're building that, from the ground level and having that facility, and I can tell, being on bad teams and good teams, it makes a huge difference when you come to the rink every day and you're happy to come to the rink, and it can go the complete opposite. So good for you on that. Just for the other listeners here too, can you talk about some of the big projects that you've done, whether it's in demolition or in the construction, that people driving by say, oh, you know what, that's Environmentall, or they did that? Like, can you speak a little bit about the history of what you've done before?
So it's interesting. I got looking at what projects we have this year, and every client that I reached out to was like, don't talk about it, because we're not sure if the financings come through, the POs are not here, we don't have a permit yet. So that's just the new stuff, but I do have some stuff to share to you. One of the interesting things that I had one of the girls prepare for me. So in 2009, we only started in October. We did 8 projects. In 2010, we did 51 projects. 2011, we did 82. And in 2025, we've completed 13,636 projects in the greater Kingston area. Smallest project, $222. Largest project, $5.6 million. So 13,000 projects in Kingston. Probably the mean average would be somewhere around $30,000. I've started going through a list of the projects, and honestly, it's overwhelming how many crazy, unique things that we've been involved with. Whether, we're not the builders, so in every case, so we've done the demo, or we've done this civil project, or we've done a cleanup, for example. But between Queens and the obvious ones, KGH, St. Lawrence College, the penitentiaries, Defense Canada Construction, Canada Housing Agency, Public Works, but I'll tell you, this year we finished 3 real, big projects that we're super, super proud of. One is we just helped the Boys and Girls Club open the robotics center in the back. And one of the things that everybody loves to talk about is donations and giving. And we give as much as we possibly can. And, there's days where it's like, how can we give more? But it's so hard, right, when in this market. Mm-hmm. But the Boys and Girls Club and youth hockey is very close to our hearts. So we give to those 2 organizations as much as we can. And we just finished this the old Woolco, which used to be at the Frontenac Center. Half of it is now the Mandarin, the buffet that's in the front. And then the back of it is now the robotics club. And it is state of the art. It is such a beautiful facility. That whole facility from top to bottom, the way that they run that place and the opportunities that it gives kids, it's incredible. So very, very near and dear to our heart. We also, very near to our heart is obviously Providence Care, KGH. I worked there for 7 years. We just helped finish the hospice building, which has been in the works for some 20 years. On the Sisters of Providence site, which is at the corner of Princess and Sir John A. You see the big Providence Manor being built in the front by Sullivan. This one was in the rear off of Phillip Street, but a facility that Kingston has been long overdue to have. So we still have to go back in the spring and finish a couple things. The other thing that we just helped out with this year, which was again very near and dear to our hearts. So my kids go to Mother Teresa, which is a public school next to Lancaster Public on Lancaster Drive. The school's been bulging for years. So about 7 years ago, they put a plan in place to build another school in Woodhaven on Holden, and priced it about 5 years ago. Well, we just finished that in the summer, and some of the work was actually finished in the fall, but the students started there in September. So originally we thought our kids were actually going to go to that school, but the way that we actually did a move personally from Woodhaven to south of Princess, so our kids stayed at Mother Teresa. But a couple more, just not to bore everybody, but we're finishing the Canadian Tire right now, which has been a massive project for us on the corner of Sir John A. and Bath Road. We're just putting in the water and the paving and the curbs, hopefully start back in April here. That store is due to open on the 16th of May, so it's a big push. The other thing that we're super, super proud of is, not sure if you know about the Podium boys that graduated from Queen's University and have basically single-handedly redeveloped Williamsville from Division on Princess all the way up to as far as I believe it's Albert Street. So all of those big new apartment buildings that are going up, we've had our hand in somewhat in whether it's demolition, civil, abatement, but it's been fantastic working with them. We just started another project on Queen Street and Berry Street with Podium. There's another building going up there. So we just took down that 5-story office building that was on that corner, assisted a little bit with a company called Roney from Toronto, and doing some of the shoring and piling. Yeah, we've got a few exciting things coming up for this spring. It's been a pretty good pretty good winner as well, so can't complain. A real winner at that. So we've had a couple clients push to the spring.
Awesome. Okay. I didn't realize that big Canadian Tire building in that new school was Environmentall, because that's, Canadian Tire is just right down the street from us. So I drive by it every day, and I'm sure a lot of Kingstonians do as well. So well done. Just talking a little bit about water. And I know we're briefly, before we got on the pod, we were talking a little bit about it, but more so with rural areas and, lack of sustainable water, and I guess even the quality of the water. Can you talk about some of the challenges about bringing reliable water and some infrastructure into, some rural properties and what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. We when I look back at how we did business years ago, and then I look at the way that we build our sort of rural properties in 2025, not a lot has changed. We have had some product innovation, and we've had some changes to the way that plumbing is completed inside the building. But you can dig up a well from 1973, you can dig up a septic system from the 70s, 80s, and the basic technology is very similar. What we really struggle with right now in the rural areas is a planning department trying to navigate through the Ontario Building Code red tape. So municipally, when you have a township like South Frontenac, Central Frontenac, thousands of them across Ontario, they're working off their municipal bylaws. They're also working through the Ontario Building Code, and they're all held accountable to meet and exceed these expectations that are laid out in front of them. And water has been a challenge builders and well people have had for years with planners. When I grew up, we had a system where the eaves troughs flowed into a tank in the garage, and that tank is what we drew our water from. And when the tank was empty, we would have a water guy come and fill the tank. And back then it was $55 or whatever it was. Today, that same service is roughly around $250, but it's available, and you have a 10,000 gallon tank or whatever the size of the tank is. You can manage the water expectations as a family. You just have to know how to do that. Most people that grow up in rural applications understand the complexities of water and sewer and how to manage through that. We are fortunate in Ontario, as is Canada, that we have one of the best freshwater supplies in the world. In the last 5 years, I don't think we've had one case where we've drilled a well where there wasn't, 2 to 3 GPM and above a flow, whether it's a shallow dug well or drilled well, blasted well. And that's remarkable, to be honest with you, because we have such a varying degree of rock in this Kingston region, from the limestone to granite, which you see just north of here. And they both create their own complexities when it comes to trying to find potable and suitable water. My fight has always been supply. A lot of the bylaws like to talk about quality, and then they like to talk about supply. So what is the minimum supply, and then what is the minimum for a quality perspective? So, no E. coli, no bacteria, 0 count when you do your water test. To me, it's a policy that should be thrown in the garbage. We all know that you can manage water now. There's systems available for E. coli. There's systems available for bacteria, electrolyte systems, sulfur systems, saltwater systems. There's technology available now to handle that. Now, supply is a different conversation altogether. But right now, there's two things that we're fighting as a builder. We're fighting the municipal requirement, which is 2,800 liters. We're fighting the bank's requirements, which is 3.53, which is 5,000 gallons a day. And a lot of times you have both of those being attested to, because you've got a young family that's building a house They're trying to achieve and satisfy the municipal requirements to get a permit. And then they're trying to satisfy Royal Bank's policy to get a loan, to get a mortgage. And in my opinion, somebody needs to sit down and take a look at these policies. I think they're a little bit out of date. We have installed several trickle systems. I'm sure both you guys have heard that terminology. It's a really, really, really easy way to manage how much water you need as a family on a daily basis. You put in a 500-gallon tank in your basement or outside, and you allow the well to slowly trickle into the tank. If you run out of water, you just have one of the water suppliers fill that tank up. As we all probably well aware, if you live within the city of Kingston, you're paying roughly $170 every couple months for your water and supply or sewer costs. In the country, there's no difference if you haul in water for 2 months for $200. It's just managing how much you use on a daily basis and understanding what you need as a family and how long to shower and how much you can water the grass, etc. But there's also been, if there's been improvements in technology, the biggest improvement that I feel personally that's made a big difference is in these low water fixtures. So toilets that are dual flush toilets, 18-gallon toilets, as opposed to the big old 26s that we used to have, low flow shower heads, taps, faucets, front load technology for washing machines using way less water. Same thing with dishwashers. So that technology has changed on an independent basis, house by house. When it comes to rural subdivisions, for example, we've really not made any gains, unfortunately, in that technology, unless you're in an area that's large enough that you can put in a central processing plant, water or sewage treatment. The cost is immense. The permits, the red tape, the engineering it's almost impossible to do from a costing perspective. You look at a region like Charlotte Lake that's got 700 or 800 people, it's just not feasible to do that and rip up the roads, et cetera, et cetera. There's just not enough of a tax base there. So we continue to use the one well by well basis. And right now, the biggest prevention from allowing more builds is the requirement for a minimum amount of water. And I personally think that the banks and the municipalities could lighten that restriction, which would allow us to build in a lot more places in the rural settings and really close to Kingston, because I'm going to tell you right now, once you get to the sort of pre-Cambrian Shield, it's way easier to find supply. The quality maybe not as good, but when you're in the limestone, I think we're all aware that limestone is very, very difficult to get supply out of. If you do get supply, a lot of times it has a sulfur component to it. So in the Kingston region, we've actually been having more success collecting groundwater recently. So shallow wells, shore wells, blasted wells, dug wells. The reason being is we have a lot of precipitation, a lot of runoff, a lot of fresh water, and we can capture that product in a large, let's say 4 foot by 20 foot diameter well, and then you just treat that water. You can shower to your heart's desire. You can wash your laundry. You can do all that stuff. You don't have to worry so much about supply. You just have to worry about maintaining a filter and electrolyte system. Whereas if you go to a 6-inch drilled well, what we're seeing and really struggling with right now is this city's bylaw is that when you drill your well, it has to have 40 feet of uninterrupted casing. And as soon as you slide that 40 feet of casing in, you don't get any water, because the water that we're seeing in limestone, the veins are up higher and they're in that first 20 to 30 feet. So as soon as you slide your casing in, you're eliminating that water. So we've been really pushing for our clients to move towards a dug well. in the outer areas of Kingston. And for the first time ever, I could say that the city actually did make a slight change in 2019. When you are doing a severance in the city of Kingston, one of the conditions that you have to satisfy is a hydro G. And in that, you have to have the suitable amount of water supply. And it was only a drilled well with a 40-foot casing. In 2019, they said, okay, you can drill, and if you don't get water, we'll allow you to blast. So although you have to pay $10,000 to $15,000 twice, which isn't real, but at least there's a secondary option that you're not going to have a piece of property that's a dud, right? Mm-hmm. So a little bit of, I could talk about water all day, and I don't want to obviously ruffle any feathers, but there's time and a place to look at things and maybe make a change. And unfortunately, making a change right now in this province is very difficult. And we continue to stack red tape on top of red tape. And eventually it's going to impact the economy. And it certainly feels like we're at that precipice right now. There's no question. But anyways, I hope that answered your question, Danny.
Yeah, very well. Danny and I couldn't agree more that making things easier rather than harder all the time, well, we'd support that. Certainly be good for both of our industries to progress as a society in Canada and Ontario. I back that 100%. Within your industry, what technologies do you see that are coming out that excite you and provide solutions to you and what you do day to day?
The easy one is obviously to talk about AI, and we're certainly feeling that in the office from an administrative perspective. So incredible software, incredible new systems that we're using for estimating, etc. Typically don't like to talk about that because a lot of the advancements in the field are a little bit more exciting. And the big one that I can really stand behind is safety. A lot of our other advancements really, they're not coming like a big bright northern star, but safety, we've obviously made some advancements with the systems, the equipment, right down to fall arrest kits. In the demolition space, largely you see a lot of these fail videos where people are knocking down a silo and the silo goes the wrong way. Well, obviously there's a lot of planning that goes into like, for example, that 5-story building downtown Kingston. The sidewalk finished up against the building, right? And then 4 feet past the sidewalk is 4 lanes of Queen Street and on the corner of Barrie. So things can happen, even though you do a lot of planning. Well, we've really seen some unique changes to the way that we do things with, high reach excavators, for example, that have the ability to reach up 5 floors, whereas conventionally we would use a standard front on an excavator and take a chance that, the building was going to fall the right way. Stacks and some of the higher demolition that we see, we're using robotics. So we have a company that's developed a robot excavator that sits on a tripod and it's controlled, by Bluetooth. It has a hammer, it has a bucket, very similar to an excavator. The beauty with that is you're able to stand, hundreds of feet away and control the technology so that if something does happen, which we know it happens, at least you've taken the risk out of play that somebody's going to get injured. Safety in Ontario has taken an absolute first priority for construction in general. And even though I'm not bedazzling you with technological advancements, it is really the most important thing that we need to advance, because for generations we've been quite careless about the way that we build stuff. And, we leave for a break and somebody's not paying attention. The most important thing in this business is to go home every day and see your families and go to hockey, etc. So we've really spent a lot of time making sure that our policies and our equipment are up to snuff to make sure that we're doing absolutely everything to prevent injuries. The technology side of things, I've been through some real unique pushes for things like, pre-assembled buildings, 3D printing, the construction of floor cassettes that are brought in pre-assembled and put in place. There is some neat stuff going on. The big thing is Canada is not a great spot to try out new technology. And although I consider myself to be quite forward thinking, there's nothing worse than, trying a new shingle or trying a new stucco or a new light or soffit fascia, and then getting called back 2 years later because there's mold issues, there's ventilation issues, whatever it may be. And this is why one of the only things that I would agree with from a red tape perspective is the Ontario marketplace is very, very slow to approve new technology in this province. So between CSA, ULC, and the Ontario Building Code, you don't see very many advancements. You've seen some advancements in the R value, right? So they've spent a lot of time focusing on, triple pane windows, spray foam, all the different materials that would give us a better R value to decrease our energy consumption, but not a lot of advancements in building materials and tools, etc. Because you tried putting something that's fantastic from California into an Ontario winter, and as early as just yesterday, I saw this real cool looking insulation installed underneath a cabin in the Picton area, and after 6 months, the material was just saturated with water because the thermal barrier that they thought it had wasn't used to -20. So we really do. We have to be super careful about the way that we advance construction, and it's not what anybody likes to hear. One of the latest changes that we made was multiple story wood construction buildings. And we have a perfect example in Kingston right now on Princess Street. I'm not going to use any names of how dangerous that idea was. And, was it an installation issue? Was it a fabrication, or was it an engineering issue? It's hard to say, but there's millions of dollars of restoration going on that particular building because we strayed from cement, which we've been using for 100 years, to try multiple story wood. Well, somebody had to be the guinea pig, and I think they did figure some stuff out because there's a few more of them going up in Ontario right now. But technology advancements in our business is and people would debate me on this. I know they would, but it is coming from an environmental guy who really loves green builds and new advancements. You really have to make sure that this is going to work before you put a client or a consumer in front of a product that's not tested and trialed, in Ontario. So anyways, a couple good things happening. Just we're a little cautious to be the guinea pig in some scenarios, but
yeah. Oh, that's all great information. I don't think a lot of our listeners would know any of that, but I wanted to talk more, I guess, about red tape, because I think a lot of people don't realize how much red tape there is in construction. A lot of the stuff that's implemented, as you said, has been passed on for many, many years and hasn't been revitalized the demand that's needed for either residential or commercial growth. Can you talk about some of the, I mean, you don't want to go too political, but I guess you can if you want to. I know Mark and I try to stay away from it, but can you talk about maybe just like even 2 or 3 things where you're like, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. If I could fix these 3 things here in the next 4 years, I think you could like blow the roof off, like, construction, and it'd be a lot easier for your life. Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think we don't have enough time in our day to talk about what I really like to get into, but I think we're faced with the chicken and the egg theory right now. Okay, there's a housing issue and there's a huge red tape issue. Everybody likes to sort of talk out of both sides of their mouths. We need to build more houses, and here's the money. We're going to give you extra money, and that's all fine and dandy if you've got provincially, municipally, giving you money to build more, and everybody wants to build more, and we want sustainability. We want housing that's subsidized. We want cost-effective housing. The problem is it's not getting approved fast enough. And now you throw in the labor issue because we've got a labor shortage, and B, we just don't work as fast as we used to. So the cost, the inflation has really hit, and you guys would know that best. A house that was 600,000 7 years ago is now $1 million, 1,200,000 maybe even. It's changed everything about our business and our ability to put up cost-effective housing in a city that's crying for cost-effective housing. They want more doors, but they just don't want to approve those doors because here's the checklist that legally we have to follow, and you need to satisfy all these conditions. And unfortunately, if you take those conditions to a smaller municipality, it might be a year, it might be 2 years. In Kingston, even if you do it all right, it's 5 to 10 years. And I'm not talking single family dwelling, I'm talking subdivisions or, larger type of, and I'm seeing stuff that's contained within the official city plan for the city of Kingston, and it's still taking that much time to get through engineering, planning, fire. But I think the one thing right now that has absolutely floored me and is going to impact our economy is the soils regulation. So don't know if you guys have heard anything about this, but for 5 years now, the ministry, so provincially, has been working on this regulation for excess soils. It is now residential, ICI, industrial, commercial. You have to, if you exceed these amounts and if you dig deeper than this amount, it has to be tested, and qualified QP, as they call it, has to review and tell you effectively where the material can go, whether it's dirty, clean. And they have this table system that's just like reading Chinese. The city of Kingston, we have one phenomenon that just blows my mind. We have a naturally recurring product called boron, which is from hundreds and thousands of years of the dirt being compressed up against limestone. So something that happens there, and we get elevated levels in every single one of our readings. So all of our samples are elevated in boron. Salt, sodium. We all know the streets are covered in salt right now as we speak. And if it freezes tonight, the city and all the private contractors are out there just flooding the city with salt. And we've tried synthetic, we've tried beet juice, we've tried all these different products. The reality is nothing works as well as salt and sand. Well, years and years of pounding that stuff out has now impacted every curbside property from Vancouver to St. John's, Newfoundland. So we have tons of clients now that are looking at spending, let's say, $2.5 million. They're going to build their dream building for their dance studio, hair salon, and then they get their budget, and then they get a QP to test the soil, and we realize, ooh, you've got elevated levels of boron, hydrocarbons, whatever it may be. It has to now be hauled to Cornwall. So what happens to the budget on something like that? And the client eventually just says, you know what, I think we're just going to hang tight here and just figure out, maybe we'll rent something, maybe we'll do something like that. So one of our biggest hiccups right now is, I think they threw the regulation a little bit too far. They should have maybe brought it in steps. They actually brought it out and then they retracted it and took it back, refined it a little bit, and then put it back out January last year. And it's wreaking havoc on our public projects and our private projects. And the city and the DCC, they can afford to deal with it, but private people absolutely cannot afford to deal with it. Now, I'm not saying you need to dig up to put a pool in, dig up some radioactive material and dump it in a farmer's field. Sure, do some testing, know where the carrier, the generator, and the receiver know what they're doing with the material. The problem is the ministry governs who can accept this type of material. And to open a facility, it can take up to 5 years to get an approval. So Kingston is in this like vortex between Toronto and Ottawa. And we have one facility that's licensed to take anything that's over what we call it Table 3, and it's in Brighton. And if Brighton can't take it, then it's got to go to Cornwall. It just doesn't make any sense. And we obviously, you know, like I said, you don't want to be dumping toluene impacted soil in a farmer's field, but there has to be a better way to manage this. And there has to be better exemptions when somebody's putting some interlock in at their house, you know, and they're digging up the material. We get calls all the time now. Can we just take this to you? And the answer is no, we can't take it. So there's this like vortex right now. People are caught in the middle. Like, do you do what's right and do it and then have to be out of pocket thousands of dollars? Or you drive down the road at night and dump it where everybody's dumping it at the end of some cul-de-sac. And we're seeing more of that now because people don't have the money to deal with it properly, right? So it's a sad situation, but unfortunately it's a hard reality right now. And compiled with everything else that's going on in the economy with the tariffs and inflation, the timing just wasn't perfect for it. So
yeah.
That's
but
the
even
one.
just to get a price on that, like even on privately, it could be anywhere between 50 and 100,000, right? Like, and it's got to be done cash, right? To remove all this stuff.
The numbers are staggering. Yeah.
Like I couldn't imagine getting a building lot and then having to remove $50,000 to $100,000, $200,000 worth of raw material. That's just not acceptable. Like just finding that out.
We're trying, the engineers are trying hard to reuse materials in certain cases on the site, which you're allowed to do. But a lot of our commercial sites just don't have the space to you know, build berms or use it for backfill, etc. We've got a job on the go right now. We've been there for 2 years. The scope of the project and the cost was roughly around $3 million. And it's going to finish close to 6 because of contaminated soils. And they had no idea what they were getting into. It's sad. It's horrific. Now, in this particular case, there was a lot of contamination because of an old fuel station. That has to be handled correctly. But salt impacted soil from pushing snowbanks up to the end of your driveway, that's a whole other conversation. Somebody with some you know, accreditation behind their name needs to step up and say, okay, maybe we've overlooked this, and maybe there needs to be some exemptions for certain materials that are common in especially in Ontario. But as of one regulation that I certainly could do with a revision, and would certainly help with the economy because people are backing out of projects because of that threat of that cost.
Eric, as we near an end here, I have a question about entrepreneurship and what it's amazing what you've done with your company. Obviously, the growth that you've gone through over the 20 or so years that you've been in business. What advice do you have for newer entrepreneurs to be successful? You know, our failure rate as entrepreneurs is really high, and when you get into a business startup, you got to be dedicated. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I hope, you know, that you have a partner that has the patience to allow you to do what you want to do, because, you know, we were fortunate. We didn't have kids when I started this business, and it was a big part of our future. But had we had kids, this probably wouldn't have happened, because she would have left me, first of all. Because the beginning of the adventure is, you know, always the biggest challenge, the first 5 years, which I think the failure rate is the highest in the first 2 years and then 5 years. But, you know, you're burning the midnight candle. You're working during the day, and then you're doing your paperwork at night. And then there's a lot of Saturdays and Sundays in there. But I am a big advocate for entrepreneurship. I've tried many different missions, and I don't think that they've failed. I've sold both of the other two businesses that I started. Didn't make any money on the sales. They were adventures. I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun. And so my biggest piece of advice to anybody that's thinking about it is don't be afraid to fail. Like I have failed. I sat down and thought that a tanning business was going to be the future for me. And 3 years later, Health Canada said, you shouldn't be going in these beds. They're cancer causing. And well, there goes that business. Not that that was a failure by any means, but it certainly, I had to reinvent myself. I went back to work. I was selling cars for Kingston Volkswagen. I then started at the hospital doing planning and construction. But you have to be able to fail and then dust yourself off, get back up and give it a rip. And that, I think that's what entrepreneurship is all about. The other thing is, my biggest thing right now is you need help, right? People need help. I'm always the first person to help, and not a new young person or older person that wants to start something new. The first person to show them QuickBooks, or here's what we use, here's how we do this, here's how we do that, and come to me with your business plan. So having a mentor is key, I guess. And then listening, which is a skill that some Canadians are starting to lack right now. A lot of people don't listen. They're processing and thinking about what they're going to say next, as opposed to listening and really, sort of digesting what you have to say. But the biggest thing is don't be afraid to fail. We've all heard the stories about people that failed, drastically, and then got back up and created Mitel or Salesforce or any of these big success stories. You have to be prepared to fail. It's an unfortunate part, but I think it's a big part of entrepreneurship. You just can't lose that drive, that sparkle to continue to forge ahead. In my case, I have a wicked partner. She's also our CFO. I couldn't have done it without her. Education's the other thing. This year I'm been fortunate. I'm going to the quantum shift program to try to dust off some skills. I've been doing some stuff with BDC. Got to continue your education, continue to learn about. I'm waiting for an invite to find out what's going on with the tariffs. I'll spend a good part of my time the next month trying to figure out how that's going to impact our business. So continuing to learn. And in my opinion, an entrepreneur loves to learn. And a lot of the businesses that I started, I didn't know a lot about when I started. And I would spend hours and hours reading and researching and learning and taking courses to become an expert in the field. And that was the part I really enjoyed. Down the road now and have people running the business for us, so I can work on the business and provide sort of my expertise to other business people. It's been a great journey, and we've been fortunate to work with some fantastic people. Kingston obviously is a very tough town to find talent because there's only 135,000 of us here. So a lot of our people have come up from the ground level through the system, and now we're in the office doing our estimating, doing our project management. I've got one guy here that started as an asbestos abatement worker. He's now senior project manager, and he runs the entire demolition and asbestos division. You can't ask for a better story than that. But so that's the type of stuff that I enjoy, but always available if anybody that wants to start a journey to chat with. So, I could shoot you my email, and if anybody wants to reach out.
Yeah, sure. We'll provide that in the description down below for anyone who's interested in reaching out to you, Eric. We really appreciate that.
Eric, I can't thank you enough. That was absolute gold of information.
Beautiful.
Just a great story, like even start to beginning, all the success, ups and downs. I think listeners will get a lot out of that, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. But I think icon here in Kingston for doing what you're doing. So I really appreciate your time coming on here, Eric.
Yeah, continued success to you and everyone at Environmentall.
Thank you, and hopefully the market picks back up here, and let's get it going in the spring, and do some renos for some people and get some people into some new decks and whatever, fences, whatever they need.
Yeah,
but
absolutely
appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate you having me on here. And anytime you guys need somebody to fill some space, let me know.
Put a quarter in and let you go.
Next time we're talking
Absolutely.
politics, we're going to get you on, Eric.
Yeah, I'm not much of a politician.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's episode 10 of Pucks, Putts, and Properties. As always, Mark Strand, my co-host Danny Taylor. Amazing interview from Eric Dinelle. We really thank him for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you again next month.
2 real estate agents of romance.